Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Insights Direct. Today, we will be discussing draw validity and lottery integrity. As mentioned, this presentation will be made available soon on the NASPL Matrix, so please feel free to share with your colleagues or revisit at your convenience. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the questions box at any time. Our speakers will be doing Q&A at the end of the session. Joining us today as our moderator is Ray Bates. Ray is well known throughout the lottery world for his many years of service and accomplishments within the industry. He was director of the Irish National Lottery for nearly 20 years and also served as president of the European State Lotteries and Toto Association, as well as the subsequently formed European Lotteries, and was an active member of the World Lottery Association's Executive Committee. For his many services to the industry, Ray has been awarded the Guy Simonis Lifetime Achievement Award and is a member of the PGRI Lottery Hall of Fame. Please welcome Ray Bates.
Hello, and a warm welcome to you all. My name is Ray Bates, and I was honored when NASPL invited me to moderate this episode of their educational webinar series called Insights Direct. We have titled this particular episode, Expect the Unexpected, Draw Validity and Lottery Integrity. Now, I'm sure all of you are very aware of Oscar Wilde, the famous Irish writer, who coined a very interesting full quote, which was, "To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect." And that man said that late in the 1800s, at a time when he never could have imagined what we would be living through now. But the phrase "expect the unexpected," I think, is a good way to wrap around what we're going to be talking about for the next hour or so. So there was definitely something unexpected happened in South Africa on the 1st of December. But were the good people in Ituba, the South African lottery, were they expecting it? So when I heard this happen, this famous draw, I had already spotted it. And I had actually exchanged some views with a man some of you may know, Guy Simonis, who is one of the monoliths, one of the great lottery personalities around. Still alive, about to be 90 in 2 months' time. So a shout out to Guy. I sent him an email talking about this, and we had some exchange of views of the whole thing. So rather than sharing what Statler and Waldorf, if you have your cultural references correct from the Muppets, would have to say about the draw, we have some really, really useful and interesting people to talk about what happened in this particular draw. So we're here to examine what happened in the recent draw, how likely the result actually was, how it was perceived by the players and the media, how the lottery operator responded to restore trust in the lottery and the integrity of their draws, and how the lottery has fared since then. So over the next hour or so, you will hear from the principal players involved, as well as some specialist speakers who are expert in this particular area. Hopefully in 1 hour's time, you will know everything there is to know about the subject. And when the main session, which has been recorded for logistical reasons, but when that's over, we will actually be going and we will have the people who present live, and they will be able to answer questions if you have any questions at the end of the session. So who have we got for you? We will open with an introduction from Charmaine Mabuza, who is the CEO of Ituba, the operator of the lottery in South Africa. Then we will have Brandon Burns, who is the Chief Lottery Director from Ituba. He will talk about exactly what happened with the draw and the reaction. Then we will have Helena Pereira, who is Vice President of Shrek 2 Solutions, who provides the RNG box and the draw systems that was so important for this particular event. That will be followed by Gus Fritchie, who is Vice President of Security Service Bulletproof. His mission is to ensure independent gaming security and compliance for organizations internationally. Then we will have David Boda, a world-class, if you like, security expert who is from Camelot. He head of information security, and he's also an important member of the WLA Security and Risk Committee. And finally, we will have a word of farewell from Charmaine Mabuza to set you on your way. So that's the program. That's what we're going to do over the next hour. It is recorded, as I say. Hopefully, we will keep it going lively, but you will have an opportunity at the very end to ask questions. I would repeat that. And before I introduce the first speaker, could I just make 1 or 2 points? As an ex-lottery director, One is the importance of trust. It's so important that a lottery develops and can only exist, trust, the full trust of its players in all it does, and particularly how it does the draws and the integrity of those draws. It must have the best systems in place to ensure that it operates with full security and integrity of all of its operations. And it must be totally transparent and ready to share all it knows with everybody, with the players and with the media, in a way they can understand. And that's important as well. We know things can go wrong. Hardware can fail. Employees can be dishonest. Procedures may not be followed. Players will be skeptical. And the unexpected can happen. Our job is simple. Be prepared. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Charmaine, who will give you the background to the South African gaming environment and set the scene for this incredibly interesting story. So Charmaine, the word is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray, for that introduction. And greetings to my panelists and hello from South Africa. I wish to extend warmest greetings to all our guests who have tuned in today. I'm here proudly representing Ituba Holdings, who's the national lottery operator of South Africa. Ituba has supported South Africans' mandate to raise funds for socio-economic development, supporting good causes that reflect South Africa's cultural values and making people's hopes and dreams come true. Since its inception, the National Lottery has paid out about 16 billion rand to more than 300 million winners, contributing more than 8.1 billion rand towards good causes. More and more players are signing up to play the National Lottery online, bringing the total number of registered players to just over 700,000 players. Currently, the South African National Lottery has the largest game portfolio in the history. The number of games has more than doubled since 2015, taking the number of games to 28 games that reflect our understanding of the South African culture. It is the largest lottery in Africa, and it is rated one of the top 5 in the world as listed by the WLA. Ituba today operates the National Lottery in a highly regulated manner, carrying out its mission with the highest standard of integrity and accountability. We adhere to all legal, ethical, and economical responsibilities and ensure due diligence and transparency. We carry our mandate in the interest of our employees, customers, and communities which we operate in. Following the December 1st draw, we received many questions from our players, and we supported an investigation by our regulator. From the very beginning, Ituba attended all concerns in a very open and transparent way. We built player trust by speaking very openly to our players about the draw process and about the lottery's use of an electronic draw system. All draws are governed by strict processes and procedures that are approved by our regulator. And believe it or not, they've got a very strict approval process. And every step of the process is independently audited. We are able to show that we have adopted all measures that can help prevent failures, and we also proved that the draw outcome was flawless and cannot be tampered with. We believe that the openness and transparency that we offer our players, our regulator, the press, and now the lottery community is of utmost importance. It is important to Ituba to reinforce our goal to operate at the highest standard in order to fulfill our mission of raising funds and providing equal opportunity to South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. That was really interesting. I have one little question, if I may. Very often in a jurisdiction, a lottery director becomes very associated with the lottery, almost on a personal level. And like, I know your background and the way you fight for equal opportunity and the foundation you have with your husband. You have a profile that is a particular type that I think would have helped you through any negative stuff that happened after the draw. Is that true? Do you share that? I'm not saying you cynically became that, but naturally, I think that would give a great image to the lottery. Do you find that?
Well, it's a balanced view in the sense that you've got to balance a number of factors when you are a person propelled into the public domain and in the limelight. Sure. And for me in particular, I think when we experience this historical draw of the December 1st, I think it was more about how we handled it, the way we were open and transparent about it. We invited media into our studio. And of course, and I think really it also talks to our personal integrity and I think the profile in the communities that we've built. And I think we've been able to navigate that. And I can safely say that our players, and the proof about that is that our players continue to play the lottery, and the lottery still continues to be the number one brand, I believe one of the number one brands in South Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So after that lovely introduction to the South African gaming scene, we're now going to go on and drill down a little bit deeper. And to help us do that drilling, we have Brendan Burns, who is the Chief Lottery Director of Ithuba Holdings. And he has agreed to come here and sit and answer the hard questions on what exactly happened. But before we get into the draw on the 1st of December, Brendan, just a few words on the whole idea of having random number generators behind your draws as opposed to the physical ones. Like originally, I remember South Africa were all physical draws, like lots of lotteries, and then they moved over. Briefly, how did that migration happen from the full 100% manual or physical draws over to the random number generators?
Okay, well, thank you, Ray. Good question. Yes, you're right. The ball machines, the traditional ball machines, we're all comfortable with. They've been in the lotteries for a long time. And we started out with them. We had a fleet of 10 machines because we have a lot of draws every week. But then we were going to introduce a couple of new games about a year after we launched, one of which was a fast draw Keno, a 5-minute Keno style game. Yep. And as you know, Ray, it's impossible. How can I have a draw show or even a draw machine, drawing every 5 minutes and keeping it all under control? And so we had to have an RNG. So we looked at an RNG. We were also launching a pick 3 game, so it would work perfectly for that as well. And we were launching a raffle game. So we decided to use the random number generator for the new games and preserve the integrity of the existing games for the time being. So that was the original idea behind why we went for an RNG.
When you went for the RNG that you have at the moment, how did you decide? Because we talked earlier about that there are 3 ways of doing. You can write it yourself, you can have your supplier provided, or you can go to a third party. How did you go through that process selecting the specific RNG that you have?
Well, we certainly didn't want to write it ourselves at the time, and we started the lottery with a best practice philosophy. We partnered with the best of the best. So we had the best central system, we had the best networks, we had the best partners in our lottery system. So we wanted the best RNG provider for lotteries. We wanted lottery expertise in particular, and very important that system, that RNG, had proven experience at integrating with the central system that we had, and of course with our IVS. That narrowed the field down to just a few players. We looked at what they had. They came and demonstrated, or they did a virtually demonstration. We evaluated it for the usual criteria: cost, benefit, support, reputation, trust, reliability. And we selected the Shrek system.
There again, you remember in the old days when you had not the old days, in the current days for some people, when you have the physical drawing, you do all of these tests before the draw and you do analysis of your numbers for randomness and all of that. It seems that random number generators do that, but it seems the one you have seemed to have kind of more that was helpful in getting you an explanation out into the marketplace of what happened on the 1st of December.
Yes, what we have, and we're very glad that we have this trusted draw aspect to the random number generator that re-verifies the draw process as authentic and preserves its integrity. So, we were able to basically from the seed number, the secret source, if you like, that starts the whole random number process, we were able to verify the authenticity of that afterwards and before the draw. So we're able to monitor the draws for its integrity, after the draw has taken place to make sure that there was no intervention from anybody else or no machine malfunction. It was a perfectly authentic draw. Just happened to be a very unusual set of numbers.
And you could never have imagined when you were doing that evaluation and deciding that was a nice characteristic to have, how useful it would be for this particular event. I can imagine.
Well, it was very helpful, yes. Very helpful to be able to audit the draw afterwards to make sure everything was perfectly okay.
Speaking of which, let's have a look at that draw, because we've seen it, but I think probably the people watching this now would be interested to actually see the draw. So can we have a look at the draw?
Kusazoba lit with tonight's jackpots. Whose life are we changing next? Will it be yours? Here are the Powerball numbers. 8, 5, 9, 7, 6. And the Powerball is 10. Let's recap these numbers in numerical order. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the Powerball is 10.
Okay, so that's the draw. Actually, Brendan, I like it. Really looks it looks almost real. Like you obviously did a lot of work with the designers to make it, and it's only in passing. But I think it's a great way to do an RMG rather than numbers mysteriously just being printed. It was a good decision.
Thank you, Ray. We took a lot of time to think about how this random number generator and virtual draw would look, because the public were used to a very beautiful draw show live on the TV. We wanted to pull some of those aspects and keep them and preserve them. We even went so far at the very beginning to include the presenters live inserted into the virtual draw show.
Excellent, yeah.
And then we eventually, when their contracts were over, we maintained their voiceover to call through the narrative. And we still have one of them using the narrator on the draw even today.
Excellent, because I must say, I would not always have been a fan of I like physical draws. I like to see, as they say, to see chance happening. But if you're going to move away, I think you found a very, very good compromise in doing it. When we're looking at the witnesses or the exhibits in the case, I suppose it'd be worthwhile having a look at the actual play slip for your Powerball game. If we can put that up maybe on the shared screen. And can you just talk us through how people got to where they got, that we had your 20 winners, all of them manually chosen? So
Sure.
Can we have a screen share with that?
Okay, so I would just maybe introduce you to our Powerball bet slip. We have a Powerball and a Powerball Plus, which is the add-on second chance game. And you can see here's a typical board A, the configuration of the number for selection. You choose 5 numbers out of a grid of 50 and the Powerball number out of a grid of 20. That people do play patterns. We've seen that time and time again. They either play the corners or they play sequences, or they just run their pen along a vertical or horizontal or diagonal line to make a pattern. And you can see actually the Powerball numbers on the right. Interesting that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are on there, but that's not what they would have played. They would have played the 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on the left, and then the Powerball 10 on the right. So that we also, some of these people have been playing this combination for quite some time. One of the winners said he'd played for several years and he loves to play sequences. I personally looked at the tickets, because obviously I actually sign off on all the jackpots and the payments, and I was quite surprised. Well, not surprised. It was interesting to see the patterns people were playing in the sequences. And don't forget that it wasn't just 20 people that won the jackpot. There were another 79 people that just missed the 10, and they had played 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So it's quite a popular combination.
Yeah, I must say, when I look at that, the thing that strikes me is the where the 10 is for the Powerball. Like if you had the numbers 5 to 9 on that line or whatever, it's I think the 10 is almost asking to be. I'd love to see an analysis of how many people choose the number 10 as your actual Powerball, because it and 4 are almost begging to be picked. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's just the
on
way
the right hand side. Yeah.
the way I see it, and that's the way they hit it. But I agree with you, and anybody, all lottery people out there will know that, in a normal sort of 6 of whatever game, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are played by about, a couple of thousand people every single draw. And even when you tell people that, they still play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, the interesting thing, Ray, is that, it's unusual to play those numbers, and a lot of people play them because they like the pattern. So they also like their birthdays as well, and they like to play their children's birthdays. But the thing is that when those numbers actually get drawn, you end up with a very large number of winners than you would normally end up with. Because normally we end up with 1 or 2, the jackpot rolls over. But when we do get a winner, it's usually 1 or 2. It's not 20.
And that was one of the problems that would have compounded. If I'm skeptical looking at that draw, I'm saying, oh, look at that, look at those numbers. And there are 20 winners, and they weren't quick pick. They all picked them themselves. It's almost it's impossible to argue almost, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, there's no quick picks. I mean, the nice thing is that they were all they were all manual selections, and even the quick pick that determines the numbers at the terminal when you go and play at the terminal or on the website, that's not linked at all to the random number generator. That's a completely different random number generator. So none of the systems knows what the other systems are doing. Not until the very end when you put the results into the central gaming system. It's only then when we know who's won. We don't know before.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Just a little anecdote. We in Ireland, we had a funny situation where the quick pick, if you chose a 2-play ticket, 1 quick pick and 1 with your own ones, we had one case where somebody had their own favorite numbers, they were birthdays or something, and a quick pick, and the quick pick number was exactly the same as the birthdays, and they were on the newspaper showing it, and we had to put a change into the terminal software to check before it printed if the generated number, if the random number is the same as the chosen one. Don't print the ticket. Get some other random numbers. So,
but interesting. If those numbers had come up, that was divine intervention.
Well, exactly, and that was my argument. That if there were 2 winners and you happened to have 2 on your 1 ticket, or if there were 3 winners and you had 2 shares out of 3. Anyway, that's disappearing.
Can I tell you another funny story?
Yeah, go. Yeah,
we had one of our jackpot winners. I think we had somebody. There was 4 jackpot winners in one draw at some point, in a few years ago. And somebody won 2 jackpots, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why he won 2 jackpots is he played his usual numbers that he plays every week, and he played them on the Monday, and he forgot he played, so he wasn't sure that he had played on the Monday, so he went back on the Tuesday just to be sure that he played his favorite numbers, and those numbers came up, and so he got 2 shares of the jackpot.
He got half instead of a quarter. Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, enough of this old lottery lore. Let's go back to away from the screen sharing, because just for a few seconds, I'd like to talk about the idea of what the probability of somebody choosing the numbers they chose as opposed to the lottery drawing a block of contiguous or continuous numbers.
Yeah.
Have you had a look at that?
Nice question. Let me try and answer it a couple of ways. First of all, look at the bet slip for a moment, and one observation you'll have is that the Powerball is a range of 1 to 20.
Yep.
So the maximum number Powerball is 20. Okay. So the maximum number I can choose on the left has to be 19 in order for a sequence to occur.
Yes.
I can't choose 21, 22, or 23. That's not going to generate a sequence.
Absolutely.
So to some degree, I'm limited to the number of possible sequences of 5 numbers on the left that will end up with a magical number on the right that forms a sequence. So if you look at the numbers that end in 20, the maximum number on the left has to be 19. There are actually 15 unique sequences that I can play that would generate the possibility of a sequence for the Powerball, for this Powerball. That's quite a lot of options. There's probably more options than what the players will play. They usually play 5 or 10 boards because don't forget they have to play the Powerball Plus. They usually play about 5 boards. They complete a bet slip. So the odds of getting the numbers correct on the left is about 1 in 2.2 million, which is not that difficult, especially as you consider we have about 5 million regular players per draw.
Okay.
So we have a lot of players. So that, and we've had in the past 5, 6, 7, and 8 has come up before on the Powerball.
Okay.
We've had 4 times when, and this is not us, this is in the history of the lottery. We've had 4 times when 4 consecutive numbers have come up before. And that would have been with the ball machines. So it's not just random number generators that generate sequences of numbers. You see sequences of numbers in lotteries very frequently. We're seeing it in our daily lotto game as well, by the way. We're getting, because it's a smaller combination, a 5 of 36. We see four combinations coming up on not a regular basis, but they come up. I'm fairly certain that one day we might have this whole meeting again and discuss 5 numbers coming up on our daily lotto, which technically and statistically is far more likely to happen.
Okay.
So this event was an unusual event, but it's absolutely possible in the laws of statistics. Every combination has the same combination of coming out as any other.
Sure.
The chances of a sequential combination are a little bit more rare, but they do happen. There are some lotteries where the winning numbers came out this week and they come out again next week. That's a very rare occurrence as well.
Yeah, strange things can happen. Now, maybe for the statistically challenged, that's enough on that. Let's go back I could keep going, you could keep going, but maybe they can't keep going. Maybe we should go back. Can we have a look to go back to the question of the random number generator? I'm more interested in that as well, in the sense that, and we all know what happened with the Eddie Tipton case and all the rest of it, and that these machines, these RNG numbers and the draw systems can be compromised or whatever. What sort of certification and checks do you do with the RNG you have in South Africa?
Well, it was initially certified before we even installed it. It had to be certified by the South African regulatory authorities, the independent certifiers. And then every year it's been certified by the Gaming Labs International, the GLI. So we make sure that it's covered and certified as random. And we take the same efforts to make sure all of our equipment is certified as fit for purpose and doing what it's supposed to be doing.
And this idea of being able to reproduce, because it's the thing I'm interested in, because it's the thing that happened to help you so much. That's kind of just part of the certification. That's just another feature in the box when it's certified, and the fact that you can reproduce a particular draw at will and prove it is okay.
Yes, it is very much, and we relied on that very much in this incident, as you can imagine. We wanted to make sure that there was no equipment malfunction, that we could regenerate this same draw from the same draw seed afterwards. And in fact, we went back and did a large number of draws. We have no issues whatsoever with the integrity of the drawing from our auditing.
Okay. Also, when all this was over, and like, what did you do, for example, with the press? What did you do to convince the press that everything was now okay and there was nothing to be worried about? Because they can be difficult and very skeptical.
Yes, they certainly can. Well, the first thing we did was to invite them into the home, basically. We brought them into the data center. We had to make special arrangements because we were in a lockdown period in COVID. And we had to take all of the COVID precautions to make sure that there was social distancing and sanitization and all of the precautions. But we brought them in and we opened the doors and said, look, you ask us any question you like. We have nothing to hide. You're welcome to come and look at the next drawing. In fact, they came to the next Powerball drawing, and we walked through the whole process with them, step by step. Yep. And we answered all of their questions. And at the end of it, they were actually very satisfied and very happy to have had that experience. I think it showed them exactly what goes on behind the scenes.
And did the regulator get involved in this, or how did they keep their head down as well, or were they kind of muscling around and causing problems?
The regulator was very good. They also had many conversations with us just to make sure that we were satisfied and that they were satisfied. We have a very close monitoring process that goes on, compliance routines that go on with our regulator. So they were very keen to understand what had happened, how did it happen, and they were satisfied that there was nothing irregular and this was a perfectly legitimate draw, authentic draw. It just so happens that the outcome of the results was what all we all know is a very unusual and unexpected result. So Ray, another thing that really is important in our decision to, and a consequence of making that decision to go for the RNG path, because of the virtual draw, it gave us the ability to actually operate remotely, which we would not have been able to do with the draw studio and the ball machines and all of the older processes. And as a result of that, when we had a hard lockdown in April, May last year, it would have been impossible for us to have continued to run the draws unless we had that ability to do a remote draw procedure, which we have now done ever since, and we continue to do it to this day. So we're very glad of the consequences of going that path and making that decision so many years ago.
Okay, and then finally, what has happened since the results came? What's been sales like since the 1st of December?
Well, sales have not been affected at all. December generally for us is a quiet month. We get 2 relatively good weeks running up to the Christmas period. And then it's very, very quiet after that. I think they're not in there. They move in South Africa to their homes. They go out of the cities. So it's not a usual sales environment, and everybody's quiet. They probably all run out of money because they've spent it on Christmas. We see sales picking up again in January, and particularly at the end of January. This is an ongoing every year pattern. So everything was exactly the same as it had been in previous years. And it's jackpot driven. We tend to get jackpots that roll into the new year. And as they climb during January and February, we see the return to the typical sales pattern. So overall, I think sales compared to last year are almost similar. I think we are down because of the challenges that we had of our lockdown and COVID at the beginning of the lockdown. But now things are returning to normal. We'll be just short of last year's record performance. And then hopefully next year we'll be back there with another record year.
Story with a happy ending.
We hope so. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brendan. Thanks. Okay, so now we're going to have Helena Pereira, who is the Vice President, Shrek2 Solutions, to explain their system for the RNG random number generator and draw system in South Africa. In fact, before we get into it, Helena, we were just talking with Brendan there. You know, what was your reaction in Shrek when suddenly you got your text or your phone call saying something funny had happened? I mean, how did you respond?
Well, Ray, I mean, we were very pleased that we could address our clients' needs, but for sure, our system was designed to specifically address these kinds of problems and others like that. So I think it's very important that we can do what we promised, that we'll be able to confirm the integrity of every draw, and that we can, that our results are unpredictable and verifiable. But I wasn't surprised or amazed. I think, that's what we're supposed to do, and that's what our technology is about. Okay, and I think that this offers different business benefits to the client. Okay, because their players need to be able to trust the lottery. So the fact that they were able to respond to them very quickly, that was very important. And, Brendan talked about the fact that sales were able to be maintained. And I think it's also important that this allows for, automation, that during the pandemic, there were a lot of lotteries that had to close, but the South Africa lottery didn't. They could keep continuing.
For example, how long did it take you to give them something they could use? Like, was it a week or a day, or how soon did you respond to the South African lottery saying, hey, what's going on? What can we say?
We were able to confirm the results immediately, and then we sent them a report within 3 hours.
That's extraordinarily fast. I mean, that would normally, like, if you sent that sort of a query on a normal system with a normal one, it could take weeks or whatever to, like, it took Tipton's years to do this. Well, did you do in 3 hours what the Eddie Tipton thing was 3 years?
We did more because we can tell that there were, we identified all problems. I mean, nobody's, definitively sure that everything was caught in terms of Eddie.
Of course, yeah, no, I understand that. I was just teasing, but no, that's an impressive response time. What about the general process? I mean, the whole auditing and the numbers and what happens in South Africa with your system. I mean, how does that work?
Right. So the simple answer is that we generate the draw results and then we verify them. They do it in different ways. They do it automatically by their ICS system in real time. So they're not going to report wrong numbers. They do it manually after the draws, and they do it ad hoc so they can go back, and if there's ever suspicion, anything, they can do it. And I'm just going to tell you very quickly how it works. What they do is they have a draw system, an RNG system that creates a proof of integrity. And then they have an audit system which takes that file and then it recreates the draw results. And by recreating it, they're able to match them and confirm if they're correct. Okay, and that's what happens most of the time. That's what happened here. But you know that if it's failed, then you have to analyze what the problem was. But otherwise, you are sure that there was actually no problem. So I believe that our draw system really provides a value in the fact that we're able, or the system's able to confirm after the fact, either that there was a problem and then identify it, or conclusively say that there was no problem. So it's really a 0-1 type of event. And I think that's in stark contrast to other systems where if you can find a problem, then you know you've identified it. But otherwise, you can't say with certainty that there was no problem. And that, so that difference in the fact that our system is so conclusive, I think that's something that our customers really, really value.
Good, that seems clear enough. What about the whole question of randomness? Because one thing is to prove what you're doing, but your system also looks after the whole randomness, which we're almost taking for granted, but it's still an important element.
Definitely randomness is important, and that's why our approach is one of guaranteeing that the numbers that come out of the RNG are random, and then by verifying them. The RNG is certified when it's first deployed, and then, as Brendan said, it's certified every year afterwards. And we also make sure that the software wasn't modified. So it's the same as during certification. The hardware is working properly. So we know that it's not deteriorating hardware, which can generate numbers that are incorrect, as happened in some states and in other areas. And when we can guarantee that, then when we're generating numbers that are random and when we're verifying them, we're actually making sure that those specific numbers are random. And that's different from other methods which take historical data from past draws and analyze them over, say, 6 months, and then they can look at them and say whether they're random. No, we're looking at specific draws, and we're able to say that is random.
What about the maybe finally the idea of RNGs into the future? You're uniquely positioned, given that it's your bread and butter, so to speak. How do you see RNGs evolving, and what would be your justification for how you see the future of RNGs and the growth of their use across state lotteries and worldwide?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think that, if you look around the world in different countries and different lotteries, there, lotteries in different places. So you really find a mix. But I think that there is, in general, there is a push towards using more RNGs. And I think there are different reasons for that. One is, as Brendan said, they wanted to do a 5-minute Keno game. So as soon as you have a need for an RNG, because there's a game that requires it, there you go. And there's more examples like that with other kinds of games too. I think another really big reason is costs. Okay, doing the mechanical draws, that requires a lot of people to run those draws. You save on a lot of people, you save a huge amount of time. Okay, and then I think there's another issue which is not less important, which is really has to do with the operations. Okay, so we saw during the pandemic, we saw that trying to improve your operations it's critical, right? We have different lotteries that couldn't do their draws. In much of the world. The US, it was easier because the lotteries were considered an essential business. But being able to do your draws remotely or in an automated fashion is critical. And that's actually one thing that South Africa found. While many of the other lotteries in Africa had to close, the South African lottery continued doing draws all throughout.
Okay, so RNGs is the future.
Absolutely. I think RNG systems are the future. I think also automated RNG systems are the future, where you don't need to rely on people to come into the office and to generate draws, where the system automates the draws and the verification. So I think that's important. I also think it's important that lotteries realize that all RNG systems are not the same, that some are more reliable than others. And that there are ways to secure these automated systems and really introduce them into your environment so that it reduces operation difficulty and reduces costs. The systems are more flexible. You can add games and all these benefits I talked about before.
Helena, thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, so we've heard about the whole Shrek 2 solutions on how they help the lottery. But now, I suppose, let's have a kind of an independent look at the whole thing. And to have an outside look, I think it's useful to have, and we have a very, very interesting speaker, Gus Fritsch, who is Vice President Security Service from Bulletproof, the GLI company, to talk about what they do in this particular area and how they work for lotteries and in the whole gamut of secure systems and RNGs. And for a start, Gus, I'd like to kind of approach a subject that I keep coming to. We've raised a couple of times so far, is that when a lottery is out choosing an RNG or deciding to go to it, they have a choice. They can do it themselves, they can ask the vendor, or they can go to a third-party solution. Now, you've probably audited or commented on all three. If I was a lottery coming to you, asking you, which way should I do it, which is the best way, how would you advise me?
No, that's a good question, Ray, and it's something that's often asked. In fact, we're currently working with a lottery in the U.S. that has their own in-house system that has been operating for quite some time, but they're at the place where they need to recertify it to include larger pool size for raffles. And they're asking the question, well, should we do this, keep on using our own system? Should we move to a third party, use perhaps our gaming partners solution? And, I echo what Brendan stated earlier when you asked him that same question, how did you sort of select and ultimately come to the decision to select the Shrek solution? Not that a lottery can't build it themselves. I have seen lotteries do that successfully, but it opens up the opportunity for more risk. I think lotteries are good at a number of things. Complex software application development is probably not the strong suit, and you need to have a very strong, large team in order to do this correctly. So my recommendation always when asked that question is look at the experts, and really the experts in this field. When you look at lottery, it really comes down to players like Shrek, like Smart Play, and like those gaming partners, IGT with their Flex Draw solution. And what's important to remember is Bulletproof and GLI, we're independent. All these are suitable solutions, and we've assessed and certified all of them at one point in time. So my advice would definitely be to go with best of breed, select a vendor, supplier that has that lottery experience, and that's your primary core business function.
You would have heard also the comments from David Boda about the standards. Do you think the WLA or generally standards should be more prescriptive in terms to help guys like you say, yes, you're really good. You do this, you do that, because that's what they have said should be in a very good RNG and draw system?
No, sure. I mean, WLA is a good standard, and when we do our security reviews, we recently assessed and looked at the Shrek system, for example, from an independent perspective outside of a specific certification, and we did assess it against WLA standards as well as those best practices that we have seen in the field. But what we have to remember is all these standards and adopting the standards, it takes some time. And we look back, and the Tipton case has been mentioned before in this panel discussion. I'm sure we might touch on it a little bit here. Yeah. And we take those lessons learned and we keep on building in these different checks and balances that need to be put into place. Because at the end of the day, Ray, it goes back to your opening statement. Really, I mean, the trust and integrity of the lottery is of utmost importance, and with that, security plays a very important role.
You mentioned the Tipton, and it's hard to keep it. It's a bit like sitting beside what's his name, Glenn, at a dinner party and not talking about the moon or something. But I mean, Tipton comes up in security. A hard question: if you had audited a system that was there that should have caught the Tipton fraud, would you have been able to spot the deficiency which Tipton was able to exploit, or is that a very hard question?
I mean, it's a difficult question, right? But I mean, yeah. I think when we look back and we see what were the top mistakes that were made, and really the biggest mistake is the fact that we had one individual, this one gentleman that was entrusted with this, immense responsibility, and all that trust was put into him without that separation of duties put into place to have separate internal audit, my main takeaway from this is that, over time, there's been great reliance on the certification and the randomness piece. And if we recall, this system did pass all those standards. It was certified, but the correct security checks, really weren't being done in the industry at the time. I mean, you have to remember, this goes back to 2003, 2005 timeframe when Eddie Tipton first started at Muscle. We're long gone from that time period, and the emphasis on security has increased greatly. And I think it's led by the suppliers like Shrek, as well as the independent test labs like GLI, continuing to increase the bar. And just to talk, for example, about something that we implemented that came out of the Eddie Tipton case, obviously the certification and randomness piece plays a very big part in any review of an RNG. But we've also implemented our overall integrity assurance program, where not only do we look at that, but we're going to be looking at the operating system, taking forensic images of that system prior to implementation, baselining it, then on an annual basis, coming back, looking at that baseline so we can see what has changed. We're reviewing that source code, not just for math problems and issues, but for security concerns. Could a logic bomb or some other malicious code be inserted into the source? And we take it a step further. We even reverse engineer that binary code to make sure that that binary that is on the operating system matches the source code. I think lotteries that take this full holistic approach to integrity, you have that assurance, and the public has the assurance that these draws are performed with integrity.
Well, yeah, I've already confessed to being more a real draw man myself, so that's probably, I don't know what. But if you were advising somebody who was starting, and you get very few of them now, but somebody starting from scratch, from a security point of view and integrity and certification, would you kind of almost try to talk them out of having a physical draw and going for an RNG? Do you see it as a superior thing to control and monitor from your perspective as somebody who checks and certifies?
I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think, ball drawings have their place in lotteries. But, to Helena's point, a number of lotteries across the world during COVID, they had to stop draws because of lockdowns, unable to get into the studio to perform the draws. So when you have the ability to fall back onto an RNG solution where remote draws potentially can be performed with the correct procedures, I think that's a good contingency and solution. And what we have to remember, and I think the point was brought up by Brendan earlier, obviously there's a lot more that goes into a ball drawing. You have all the pre-checks, you have that too in the RNG draws, but it's a much more streamlined process. And I think there's more opportunity actually for potential fraud in a ball drawing than in an RNG. You just have more people who are involved. There's more players, and it is actually a greater cost at the end of the day to the lottery. With that said, nothing really replicates those bouncing balls that come out of a chute and they display them with the talent on air. So I don't think we're ever going to go away from ball drawings. I think both ball drawings and RNG can operate together.
As you say, it's in either or. I think it's the right way to win. Because that's terrific. Thank you for that. So we've been listening to lots and lots of the details of what actually happened on the famous draw of the 1st of December. But I think it'll be worthwhile if we pull back a little bit and have a look at this a little bit from a distance and look at it through the eyes of standards and best practice. And to help us do that, I'm really pleased that we're joined by David Boda, who is the head of information security at Camelot. A renowned information security specialist all over, dare I say, the world, and also a member of the WLA, the Security and Risk Working Group, which he is a driver of. And I think he is really well placed to give us a broad view into this whole area of security from a standards point of view. So to kick off, David, maybe, because we have a lot of American people listening, and maybe it would be worthwhile just explaining a little bit about the security standards, WLA, and what they're really trying to do and what it could mean for systems like this.
Oh, thank you, Ray, and thank you for that very kind introduction. Sure thing. So the World Lottery Association, since 1999 has had security standards, and since 1999 there's been 6 iterations of those standards to the current 2020 version. And currently there's 119 best practice security controls for operating a lottery within that standard, which really help operators and others involved in the lottery sector understand where that bar for best practice is and how to provide all their stakeholders assurance in terms of lottery integrity. There's two levels to the standard. There's level 1 for people starting out, or organisations starting out on their lottery security journey, and level 2 as a higher standard. And interestingly, for our American colleagues that might be listening in, those that work in states that offer the Powerball game, and any lottery that's already passed an audit by muzzle against Rule 2 automatically qualified for the WLA security standard level 1 certification, which is great news and something we've recently introduced. Within the standard itself, there's 4 main annexes. One that looks at that's applicable to everyone. A second that looks at controls specific for lottery operators and broken down into different game mechanics. There's a section following that on controls for those that develop or supply gaming systems or games. And then there's a section on multi-jurisdictional games. So that's how the standard operates, and some context around that.
How far would the standards go down? For example, would they be very specific about, for example, RNGs, which I think is one of the topics, or one of our main focus points today? That does it get down into the RNG level, and what sort of thing does it say about it in general?
So that's a great question. So the standard's not a prescriptive standard. So for those that are familiar with something like PCI DSS, as by way of example, that tells you exactly what you need to do, but it's a standard that provides a framework in which a lottery can make some risk-based decisions and give some guidance around that. There's actually 3 areas of the standards that explicitly talk about RNGs, although there's other areas that support that. So areas that support it will be where the standard talks around controls around segregation of duties or security testing, for example. But there's 3 areas of the standard that specifically reference it. So there's a section on the electronic lottery draws, electronic instant win games, for example, and there's 4 control requirements specifically around random number generation and the integrity of that. And then there's 2 other sections in the controls for development and supply of games, one around the integrity of gaming system hardware and software, and the other around the randomness used in generating game data for the production of scratch cards or physical instant tickets.
Okay, so it goes quite detailed. For example, there's a thing that intrigues me. If I'm starting off in a lottery, or I'm sitting there and I'm considering RNGs, I have 3 approaches. One, I can go to my supplier and say, hey, have you got an RNG you can give me? Or I can go and get a third party to write one, or to have one, to provide one, or I can write one myself, a DIY. Would the standards, and if not the standards, what's your general feeling on which of those 3 approaches would give the best result for a lottery setting out to do RNG?
Sure. So listen, I think all 3 approaches are equally valid, right? And one organisation is not necessarily any less or more capable than any other to develop a secure random number generator. I think the question is whether the organisation has access to the right expertise to assist them, whether internally or otherwise. I think it'd be fair to say that in my short time in the lottery sector, I've seen examples of RNGs implemented across our industry pretty well and pretty poorly. It's easy to write a line in code that calls a random number function and gets a random number back, but it's quite hard to do in a way that gives stakeholders assurance that there's end-to-end integrity of the system. Right? So,
it's a very complex area. Do you feel that people, like you've been years and you're a man and boy in this business, do you think people are really, up to the task of deciding what's best? Because these things are getting quite complicated and ways around them are demanding more and more kind of expertise. Is that expertise generally available in lotteries?
Well, applied cryptography, statistics, and the other disciplines required here aren't those which I think it would be fair to say the majority of our peers in the either whether they're a lottery technology professional or a lottery security professional are expert in and practice day to day, right? So some of them might have degrees in mathematics that they might bring to bear here, but like anything, if you don't regularly practice these things, it's not something that's going to come naturally to you. So whether it's asking the right question of a potential vendor or whether it's threat modeling something with an internal software engineering colleague, those skills are going to be required. And if a lottery doesn't have those expertise in house, then I think to answer these specific questions, that they might well require external specialist support. It's not something a security or technology generalist is necessarily going to be geared up for. I know one or two lotteries that certainly do have those skills in house, but I think it would be fair to say the majority of our colleagues across the lottery world do not.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very, very specialist area. And kind of finally, or almost back to the kind of the purpose of the day, looking at RNGs and how they work. The South African one. I mean, I understand that the South African RNG has what they say is a kind of unique facility to recreate individual jobs, as opposed to historically looking at the performance of the draw system and the whole RNG within that. Do you think that feature of being able to, well, obviously it was helpful for this particular case of the 567, but in a general sense, is it good to have the ability to have this, to be able to look at specific draws, recreate and prove that they were good?
Yeah, I mean, I think that approach of having an auditable, provable, verifiable and reproducible outcome represents the best practice in the industry that certainly I've personally seen. But best practice isn't necessarily the right standard for every lottery. So I think each lottery will have their own risk appetite, and that will be driven by stakeholder requirements and different game mechanics they need to support and other factors, and they need to make a decision on the extent that they want to go to with regards to the integrity of their RNG and the extent that it's right for them to meet that best practice standard.
Okay. Would you like to have been in a position to have to brief your bosses on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 coming out in a draw in Camelot?
No, I think I'll pass on that opportunity, but thank you.
Okay, we'll call it a day. Thank you very much, David. That was a terrific addition to this particular session. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ray. Many thanks all.
Okay, so as we approach the end of our episode, what a rich mix of statistics, security, integrity, and lottery issues we have heard discussed. Have we explained the unexpected, or have we seen that the unexpected was actually expected? I don't know. That's for you to decide. However, what we do know is that the South African random number generator and draw system really stepped up to the line here when it was called upon, and played, I think, no small part in responding to the unexpected results of the 1st of December. So could we say thanks again to NASPL for its initiative in including this particular topic in its Insights Direct project, which really is an interesting project and has some very interesting other topics available online. So we now have most of our speakers online to answer any questions you may have. So put your thinking caps on, get the questions in, and we will take those after a final word of farewell from the Ithuba CEO, Charmaine Mabuza.
I must say, I found this discussion today most interesting and informative. I feel I have definitely added to my lottery statistical and security knowledge. Thanks to NASPL, and a special thanks to all the experts who contributed to today's session. As I suggested earlier, state lotteries should reflect the cultural values, as well as the hopes and dream of the people it serves. These are fostered by a lottery being seen to carry out its job with the highest standard of integrity and accountability. The success of this aim can ultimately be measured by the extent of which the people and the players trust the lottery. Today's discussion has reassured me that we have a robust and secure system in place for our lottery, which our players in South Africa trust and which will continue to underpin our operation and help us in our primary purpose, which is to raise significant funds for our good causes.
Welcome back, and thank you, Charmaine, for those final words of farewell. To help us here, we also have Mackenzie Whittaker from NASPL, who is the communications coordinator. She's going to filter our questions and feed any questions there are to us. So if we have had any questions, could I ask Mackenzie to pass on any questions there may be?
Thanks, Ray, and thank you to all of our panelists for being here. We do have some questions, and Ray, I think this is a good one for you. It's sort of an international question. Could you say a little more about the probability of this sequence and provide some intuition about how often we should expect to see such sequences occur in lotteries around the world?
Oh, yeah, simple question, right? Actually, this is a bit complicated, but if you could stay with it, I think it might be worthwhile. I would like stay with me on this. I checked it out with NASPL yesterday, and NASPL, for example, have 53 lotteries, but let's say 50 for round figures, and they have an average of 8 draws every week. So that's kind of 400 draws in NASPL every week. And if you think of a year, multiply that by 52 or 50, you get 20,000. So there's the first figure. NASPL have 20,000 draws a year, the first bit. Second bit, there's a difference in what a player playing a game, their odds are. If I play a 14 million to 1 game, if I play one, I have a 1 chance in 14 million of winning, whether I play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whether I play birthdays and anniversaries and all of that. However, if you look at it from the point of view of the lottery and see the chance the lottery might draw not just a 1 sequence, but any 6-number sequence. So this is a different way of thinking about it now. So the odds of the game, let's take a simple example, 636. It's an easy one because it's a 2 million to 1 game. Now, if the lottery draws in the 636 game, it can actually draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 31, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means there are 31 6-number combinations the lottery might draw of the 2 million that would actually be a sequence. And the odds of 31 out of 2 million are 65,000 to 1. So you're remembering 2 figures now, the 20,000 draws a year. Now we're talking about 65,000 to 1 chance of a lottery with 36-number game doing it. What I did then also was looked at a 6 of 49 game, and the equivalent odds are 320,000 to 1. And then if you get roughly an average, pick an average lotto game across all the NASPL states, the odds of getting 6-number sequence is about 1 in 200,000. We're nearly there. If you then look at the other funny games you can have, or funny results like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 3, 6, 9, 12, and all of those, let's assume the same number of those occur in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we have 1 out of 200,000 plus the other ones, 1 out of 200,000, which gives us 1 over 100,000. Okay, back to the first figure. You've got 20,000 draws in NASPL lotteries a year, and we've just said that there's a 1 chance in 100,000 that they will be either 6 numbers in a row or the 2, 4, 6, 8, some eyebrow-raising result. Now, if there's 100,000 of these likely to happen, and you're putting away 20,000 of them every year, simply divide the 100,000 by 20 and you get 5. So for NASPL lotteries, assuming an average lotto draw, it will be every 5 years, one of those draws will produce this particular combination of continuous numbers. Take that to the world level. NASPL has 50 lotteries. The rest of the world has 114 or something. Let's say 100. And let's say for the rest of the world, the games are roughly the same spread as they are for NASPL. We're making huge leaps, huge assumptions, but we'll get to a figure that you'll be able to impress everybody you know with when you get back home after listening to this. So we have the chance of 5 years for NASPL. If you add on another 100 another 100 lotteries to the 50 in NASPL, you now have 3 times the lotteries having a go at trying to make those 6 numbers appear. And how soon will that happen? You simply divide the 5 years by 3 and you get 1.7 years, and 1.7 years is 20 months. So my prediction is that this will happen again in 20 months or once every 20 months. What will happen again? A lottery will pull out an eyebrow raising result somewhere in the world. I give you that. It has huge assumptions, huge leaps of faith, but that's my kind of broad answer. And really the message is this sort of a result is not as unexpected as you might think. It is far more likely to happen. We've seen the South African case, but it's far more likely to happen. Now I will shut up. You can actually see some more calculations, and this was something Brendan explained for the South African draw, but there is also on the Shrek site, you can find a detailed description of the maths involved. But all you have to remember is this could happen in a lottery somewhere in the world over 20 months, and it could be your lottery. Okay, sorry about going on so long. It's a horrible question. Are there any more questions out there, Mackenzie?
There are. That's a lot of math. There'll be less math in this one, I promise.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not, because if you were listening, it was worthwhile, I assure you. Anyway.
After all that the industry has experienced in terms of drawings and fraud, it's interesting that they still factor in cost at a higher consideration than reliable security. Why do you think this is, especially since trust is our most important asset?
Hey, Brendan, one for you. So what is cost more important than trust?
No, no, I don't know. Look, I appreciate your question. It's not that way around. Cost is one of the things you have to look at. Obviously, remember one of the objectives of a lottery for all of us, well, most of us, who are providing funds to give to charities. There's a lot of pressure on charities, and they want more and more money. There's more and more charities, and times are hard. So our goal is always, as a business, is to maximize returns for good causes. We have to look at the operations. We have to be efficient. We do that. We don't compromise trust. And even if you think about it, the random number generator and the ball machine, I know there were some interesting arguments during the debate. Yeah, there's arguments for both. I can see the day in the future when there's some virtual 5D animated ball draw machine that looks like a real ball machine, but it's a random number generator, and we win the best of both worlds. Trust is very important, and we take that, and integrity as one of our highest principles, which is why we spend so much time on procedures and compliance and monitoring and auditing and internal auditing and external auditing. So the cost savings are there, but you might save money. You get 20 people at the draw, now you've got 10, but now you've got expensive virtual costs to do virtual draws, and so there's always new costs to replace the old costs. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I must say I agree with you. I think trust will always trump cost, or should always. I think there's another question in Mackenzie. Is there somebody else has another question?
We do have another one. This would have been a good one for David, but I don't think he's in here right now. Does an industry standard exist that addresses security controls for remote RNG access? And do WLA standards address accessing an RNG remotely?
Yeah, I mean, I can just.
Yeah, I was just
I
going
don't
to say,
think.
can you just sort of that issue of remotely operating? Never mind. Well, never mind the standards, but that aspect is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that specifically on remote RNG access, I don't think that there's anything in the standards on that. That really is a question for David. I'm sure there's other things in the standards that would, that are related, but I hesitate to answer that question more specifically.
But even can you, even for me almost, but like the idea of the like how the usefulness of the remote operation, or maybe Brendan, you've lived off this, and it's been really, you talked about it already.
Yeah, and we didn't have much time to get ready for a remote drawing operation, because the instruction from our country president was to get ready. We only got so many days and weeks to get remote as a whole country. So the RNG is in the data center, and it still automatically does what it's supposed to do at the allotted time, and creates its random numbers and sends it to the independent verification system and to the central system regardless. We just tap into those other systems and request, what was sent, and the whole process is automated as if they were sitting in the draw studio. Sitting in the data center. So I think one of the nice things I also like about the remote draw now is that it's completely recorded. We've got step by step. Everything is recorded on a virtual room.
Wasn't that the problem with old? Yeah, sorry, Helena, do you want to add something to that?
I would just add that there is concern, especially I would say a lot in U.S. lotteries, about having systems that are connected, even remote systems. But we have a remote draw solution that we offer, and I think one of the key things that we offer is this feature that we've been talking about, this ability to prove the integrity of the specific draws, and and that allows you to have automation or remotely connected, because you can prove the integrity of the draw.
Okay. Yep. Any more, Mackenzie?
Not a question, but an interesting story. The New York Lottery had over 100 winners for a lotto draw when the numbers matched those printed on a run of Chinese fortune cookies that were distributed. So lots of interesting sequences coming up.
But that's like, it's not directly for lotto draws, but there's a famous one about any of the East Coast American, when 3/17 comes up, which is the 17th of March, which is St. Patrick's Day, they always have to put a cap on the 317 in your 3-digit number game, or 0317 in your 4-digit number game, to avoid having zillions of winners and crashing the system as well. So yeah, I mean, you can produce funny ones on that.
No, and I think that that's just another example of a case where you would want to have integrity verification. And there's many of them, and who would have thought that the Chinese fortune cookies would be one, but there are cases where we want where there is some sort of suspicion about a draw, and we want to know for certain that there was integrity.
And you never know. We had one as well, and that there was a brochure print. I was looking at frequently played numbers, and there was one inexplicable combination that we couldn't figure what it was, because it didn't have a pattern or anything. And it turned out we had printed some sort of a brochure which had shown a play slip with 6 numbers marked on it. And obviously the people who saw that decided these were going to be the numbers. And we had like 2,000 people had seen this particular ad, and we just couldn't figure it at all, because it had no pattern shape. I'm sure you've got a story on that, Brendan, of odd numbers being played for odd reasons.
The story we're on tonight is the most odd one, of course. Yeah, I've seen lots of different odd numbers come up from time to time, and you'd maybe just think there, because we have on the back of our bet slips how to play instructions.
Sample. Yeah.
Of course, I wonder when they will come up. It'll be interesting. We'll get a lot of winners then as well.
As we say, you can never, ever overestimate or underestimate your players and how they will behave, and never try and predict what they will do.
I think, there was a beautiful story we had. One of our big Powerball winners had always playing his children's birthdays every year, okay? And when they all got 1 year older, those numbers came up. Could you imagine that? He adds another year every year, and then one day that was the right combination.
This is if it's for you. Yeah, if it's for you, you've got it. Mackenzie, how are we doing, or should we let everybody go home, whatever part of the world they're in, and have their tea?
That is all the questions I have for you guys. Unless there's anything you'd like to share, any final thoughts?
Brendan, unless you have anything, or Helena, or we're okay, I think.
Well, just thank you, everybody, for joining in. It's always a challenge when something like this happens, the unexpected. I guess you just have to be ready for something when it does, and stick to all your good practices and best principles, and that's what you can do.
Thank you, Brendan. And so I suppose thank you from me, and thank you to all the panelists. Pity we couldn't get the others at the end, but they are busy people, much in demand. So I will pass the word back over to Mackenzie just to sign off. Thank you. Thank you all.
Big thank you to our panel and to Ray for moderating, and thank you all for attending. Don't forget, you can find this episode and more on the NASPL Matrix, and keep an eye out for more information on upcoming episodes of Insights Direct. Thanks again and have a great day.